Would you risk potentially losing tens of thousands of dollars on a house that you haven't even had inspected yet? That could happen to you in North Carolina. Buying a house in North Carolina is different than other states. We have a deposit called a due diligence fee that is due upon going under contract. This fee is paid directly to the sellers. That due diligence fee is due upon going under contract. So that's prior to inspections, that's prior to your appraisal, that's prior to your full loan approval. So there is a risk for buyers in North Carolina. Did I mention this fee is non-refundable? So if you as a buyer decide to walk away, you're not getting that money back. You may be thinking, I would never do that. There's no way I would put money down on a house that I haven't had inspected. I don't have my loan approval. I haven't had my appraisal. Well, if that's the case, then you won't be buying a home in North Carolina. But the good news is there is a process and a way to handle this to help mitigate your risk and make sure that you have a successful outcome. And there's one big exception where you don't have due diligence in North Carolina, and I'll be sure to tell you that at the end of the video. In this video, I'm going to break down how that due diligence fee works in practice, because every day I'm helping buyers navigate this process, and it sounds scary, but there's a way to do it so you can have a successful outcome. So let's break it down and let's go. I'm Keith O'Hare, and I'm a realtor who helps buyers and sellers in the Raleigh-Durham market of North Carolina. If you're finding this content helpful, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so I know to produce more content like this. In North Carolina, when you're buying a home, there's three main financial components to your offer. There's the purchase price, due diligence fee, which we're going to talk about in this video, and earnest money, which we'll also touch on as well. Purchase price is pretty obvious. It's what you're buying the home for. It could be the list price. It could be under list price if you get a deal. It could be over list price if it's a competitive scenario and you need to pay over to get it. So purchase price is one of the main components, but that one's pretty obvious. So let's talk about due diligence. The due diligence fee is a non-refundable deposit due once you go under contract. So if your offer isn't accepted, no money lost, no money exchanges hands. It's only due to a seller if your offer is accepted, but it is due immediately upon going under contract. The good news is this money gets credited towards your purchase price. So as long as you move forward with purchasing the home, you don't lose any money, you don't pay any extra money. It's almost like a pre-deposit on that purchase price of your home with the due diligence fee. The third financial component is earnest money, and that's held in a trust account. The big difference between earnest money and due diligence in North Carolina is due diligence money is non-refundable versus earnest money is refundable, and it doesn't get locked into the transaction until a little bit later in the process typically. So that means after your inspections, after you've had your appraisal, after any negotiations, after your loan approval typically, so that earnest money can be refundable typically compared to due diligence, which is non-refundable. To recap, the big three financial components of the offer are that purchase price, due diligence fee, which we're going to really focus on this video, and that earnest money, which we'll touch on, but does not play as large a role in North Carolina as the purchase price and the due diligence fee. I know exactly what you're thinking at this point. Well, if the earnest money is refundable, I'll just do a lot of money for earnest money and really not that much money for due diligence, because that's non-refundable. The earnest money is refundable. We'll go really high on earnest money and really low or nothing for due diligence. Well, unfortunately, to have your offer accepted, it doesn't work so well to do that. And let me tell you why. In North Carolina, having the due diligence fee puts some skin in the game for buyers. We don't see buyers putting in offers if they're not really serious on a home, because there are real financial consequences if you walk away from the transaction. So there's money on the line due immediately once you go under contract. So by having this due diligence fee, a lot of our contracts in North Carolina do make it to closing. Certainly we have contracts fall out, but remember, because there's due diligence money, nobody wants to lose money, even if it's a smaller amount. So doing this helps protect the sellers and creates more serious buyers. Now remember, the seller knows that earnest money is refundable. So even if you did a really high amount for that earnest money, the seller knows that you could get that money back. So having a higher due diligence fee is what really makes your offer stronger and makes your offer more appealing to a seller, because they know it's non-refundable. So you increase your odds of getting your offer accepted with a higher due diligence fee. Now the amount for due diligence is very situational, whether it's a multiple offer competitive situation or a home that's been sitting in the market in a not as popular area. So the due diligence amount can vary tremendously based on where the home is located and the type of situation. But at the end of the day, the due diligence fee matters so much more to a seller than that earnest money. So you really have to do a strong and competitive due diligence amount to have your offer accepted versus earnest money. How important is this due diligence fee in North Carolina? I tell my buyers, if you're ranking the three financial components of the offer, that purchase price, that due diligence fee, that earnest money, Purchase price is typically number one for the seller. They want to get the most money for their home. Obviously, they want some other good terms. They might have a particular closing date, but in general, most people want the most they can get for their home. But right after that is that due diligence fee, because it creates security for the sellers. Nobody wants to put their house back on the market. Nobody wants a buyer to walk away. Nobody wants a buyer to walk away for insignificant issues. So having that due diligence fee in play and having a strong amount really makes sure that the seller is compensated if you decide to walk away as a buyer, or what really is more important, it solidifies the deal. It makes sure that you are going to make it to closing and that the seller knows that you are a serious buyer. So it is extremely important. So if I were ranking those financial components, I would put purchase price number 1, maybe 1A or 1B is due diligence, and then earnest money 17F. It plays a factor and it's important, and it adds some security for the seller that you're not going to walk away at the last minute. But really, it's the purchase price and due diligence in North Carolina that play the biggest factor in getting your offer accepted, along, of course, with those closing dates and other terms. But earnest money is so much less significant, in my opinion, in North Carolina than the purchase price and the due diligence fee. What if there are issues that come up in your home inspection after you've already paid that non-refundable due diligence fee? In North Carolina, with our resale properties per our offer to purchase, you're buying the home in as-is condition. So the seller is not required or responsible to make any repairs. Now, it's customary that repair negotiations take place in North Carolina, but technically per the contract, those repairs and those issues that come up in an inspection report are not required to be fixed by a seller. So it's really important when you're determining your purchase price and that due diligence fee that you understand in North Carolina, it is not a requirement for sellers to do it, even though it is customary that repair negotiations take place. Even though a seller is not required to make repairs in North Carolina, I always recommend a home inspection for my buyers. Typically, what I'm recommending is a general home inspection, a radon inspection, and then a pest inspection. So those are the 3 main inspections, and then some add-ons if necessary. If you're on a property on septic, you would need a septic inspection. Just the other day, I had an HVAC inspection because of some issues with the HVAC components. But the main 3 are your general home inspection, your radon inspection, and your pest. Now, those issues that uncover, you can certainly request repairs. Like, repair negotiations do take place in North Carolina, even though we have that due diligence fee. And I have a great track record of getting repairs and credits for my buyers, even though we have this due diligence money at fee. Why would this occur? Let me tell you. Even though the seller has that non-refundable due diligence deposit, it's typically in their best interest to negotiate. They still don't want to put their home back on the market, even if they are compensated with that due diligence fee. It's better to deal typically with the buyer you have in hand and try and work with them than try and go through having to relist your home, having showings and people back in, having the stigma of having your home been on the market and explain why it fell through. So if there's smaller issues, yes, it's going to be harder to get those negotiated in North Carolina. But if there's some substantial meat on the bone for the real problems in the inspection report, like major components of the home, like foundation, HVAC, roof, you name it, those can add up and be very costly for a seller and for a potential buyer that could sway them enough to risk losing that due diligence fee and walking away, which is not good for the seller. And if they don't fix it, then they have a disclosure problem. It's called a material fact, and they would have to either disclose that, or their agent would, that there is now a known issue with the home that maybe they didn't know about when they listed. So it could be in the seller's best interest to negotiate and work with the buyer. So don't be so scared off that that due diligence fee means you're going to get nothing. Yes, the contract in North Carolina states it is an as-is sale, but typically we are seeing sellers and buyers negotiate during the repair and inspection process. So don't be too discouraged and think, oh, I have to buy the home exactly as is. Be prepared that that's what the contract states, but most of the time repair negotiations are occurring in North Carolina, and I've got a great track record of presenting the information and getting good credits and repairs for my buyers. It's important to note, as a buyer, the higher the due diligence fee is, it may help you in securing the home. If it's a competitive scenario, having a higher due diligence fee could help you be the winning offer, but that could really hinder you in future repair negotiations. So you have to really balance that and keep that in mind. For example, say there was a home where you did $20,000 in due diligence money in North Carolina, which is not out of the ordinary in the Raleigh-Durham market for certain price points. Now, with that $20,000, the seller gets that, it's non-refundable. What if the inspection report reveals maybe like $4,000 to $5,000 worth of real serious issues? The seller can do the simple math. Is the buyer going to lose $20,000 because the seller wouldn't repair $4,000 to $5,000 worth of issues? Probably not. Like, most people wouldn't do that. Maybe you would, but most people realize that I don't want to lose $20,000 because the seller won't do $4,000 or $5,000 worth of work. So the math really favors the seller and helps them for the repair negotiation stage of the game. So just remember, to get the house, doing that higher due diligence could hurt your future repair negotiations, but you have to weigh that and balance it out. So as a buyer, when you're doing that higher due diligence amount, you need to keep that in mind and really be prepared. The seller might not do any repairs or do any credits because of your higher due diligence amount. So just make sure you're keeping that in mind with whatever amount your agent advises you to do for due diligence to get the home. It could impact later on repair negotiations. You may be thinking, what if a major issue comes up in the inspection report that the seller did not disclose? Well, in North Carolina, it's an as-is contract. The seller is still not required to make that repair, and you would have to prove that the seller knowingly lied on their disclosure form. And in North Carolina, you're gonna laugh, there's 3 options on our disclosure. There's yes, there's a problem, state what it is, no, there's no problem, or no representation, I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no. If they check no, there's no problem, the problem's revealed, you would have to prove somehow that they knowingly lied on that form, which that can be really challenging, and that would involve a court process. Otherwise, that deposit is non-refundable. So it's important, and I'll touch on this in a moment, why you need a great agent who's gonna represent you well and even dissuade you from putting in an offer when they see red flags or potential issues that could come up during an inspection process. What I wanna hammer home is, I mean it when I say that due diligence fee is non-refundable. So you need to be prepared when you're putting that money in that you're not getting it back. Now remember, the good news is as long as you move forward, it gets credited towards your purchase price. It's not extra money that you're having to bring to the table. It's like a pre-deposit that you're paying, but it is non-refundable. So you need to make sure that you are very serious about buying this home and understand the risk of losing that due diligence money. Now, the one exception I would say is if a seller were to ever back out of a contract, which is really challenging to do in North Carolina, you would receive your due diligence money back in that case, as well as any cost of inspections. But again, that could take a while to play out. Otherwise, if you walk away, if there's any problems, if your loan falls through, if there's inspection issues, that money is non-refundable. The only one exception is if the seller were to walk away, then yes, you would get that due diligence money back. But otherwise, nope, not getting it back. So how do you protect yourself from losing that due diligence money? This is where you need a great agent to represent you, whether it's me here in Raleigh-Durham, or I can help connect you with a great agent all across the state of North Carolina. You need great representation in being your eyes and ears on the ground and understanding neighborhoods, understanding disclosures, understanding what to look for, what are some of the red flags that come up. I'm probably critical to a fault with my buyers about pointing out concerns or issues that they may love the home and think it's, oh, this is our ideal neighborhood, but I'm looking at the same time for signs of foundation cracks, signs of grading and flooding potential risks, signs of water issues. You name it, I'm looking at the disclosures, the age of the different systems, the age of the roof to point out risk. You may decide to move forward as a buyer, but it is my job as an agent to let you know of all the potential risks that I at least see. Certainly, I'm not a home inspector, I can't see it all, but I'm gonna point out any issue or concern that I have up front before you have that due diligence money. So make sure that you have an agent that you can trust and will guide you through this process and be a straight shooter. They need to be honest and tell you any concerns they have about the home up front. If they're just trying to sell you on this home and not point out any concerns or issues, I would be skeptical. Because of my approach, I rarely have buyers walk away during the due diligence period and have a successful track record of getting negotiations for my buyers during that period, even when they have higher amounts of money to lose. So if you have a great agent who is doing the homework and advising you on the front end, you will be prepared to have a successful outcome. At this point, you're probably thinking, how much is this due diligence fee? What are we really talking about here? Is it $1, $10, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000? And it depends. It varies greatly across the state of North Carolina. Even in our Raleigh-Durham triangle area, it depends a lot. And let me tell you more about that. I tell my buyers there are really 2 tracks for what that due diligence fee could look like. There's the home that's brand new to the market. It's priced well, it shows well, it's a competitive home where there's going to be multiple offers or you know there's multiple offers. What the due diligence fee and the offer terms look like for that home are extremely different than a home that, it's been sitting on the market a few weeks, maybe it's had a few price reductions, it doesn't quite show as well. You can get away with a much smaller due diligence fee with that second home than you can on the first. But remember, homes in popular areas and desirable neighborhoods are the ones getting multiple offers. So yes, it would ideally be nice if you could go with track 2 and go with the home that's been sitting on the market. But in our more highly desirable areas, you're going to be looking at a multiple offer scenario. So you'd be looking at a stronger due diligence amount in those situations versus a home that's been sitting on the market a while. The amount also depends on where the home is located. Homes that are closer into Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill, Cary, Apex, closer into the hub of that triangle area, they're going to attract a much higher due diligence fee typically than a a home that is more on the outer suburbs or the exurbs. So if you're closer in, typically that correlates with a higher due diligence amount, but not always. And then finally, the price point plays a large factor. A home that's, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 is typically not going to have as high of a due diligence as a home that's $700,000, $800,000, $1 million plus. Those homes typically command a much higher due diligence amount because they are more expensive homes than homes that are not quite as expensive. You're not going to be expected or quite as competitive or customary to put down a much higher due diligence fee on those lower price point homes. In the Raleigh-Durham area, there's no such thing as a set amount for due diligence. It's what you decide, it's what your agent advises, but I would say at least $1,000, at least likely $2,000, and that's honestly very low. It's probably gonna be a lot higher than that. We're probably looking more $5,000, potentially $10,000, or at those higher price points, you could be looking at $20,000 plus, or I've had some extreme cases when the market was very hot where we were doing $40,000, $50,000. I've even seen over $100,000 in that due diligence fee. So at that point, you have to be all in on buying the home. I never want my buyers to lose any money, even if it's $1,000. But just note, you need to have an agent that you can trust and guide you through the process and who understands this local market to help advise you on what you should be putting for the due diligence amount. So I work with buyers every day and can advise you on what that amount should be. So you need an agent that you can trust and guide you through this process. My last big tip around this is please make sure that due diligence money you have as a buyer that you need to turn in is in a liquid bank account that is easily accessible. It is due upon going under contract, so you can't be transferring money from your online bank to then later pay it. You can't be liquidating stocks or a mutual fund to then later pay it. It is due when the contract is accepted. So you need to have whatever money that in theory you could be putting towards due diligence in an account with a checkbook. We're still a little old school here in North Carolina, that you could write that check and turn it in after going under contract. So just remember, have that money in a liquid bank account that's easily accessible. If you're thinking you're in the $5,000 to $10,000 range for due diligence, have that money set aside. If you know that you could go $50,000 or $100,000 plus, based on the guidance of your agent, have that money in that liquid bank account so it is ready to go, so you do not lose your home because you were not prepared and didn't have money in the right place at the right time. The good news is people are buying homes every day in North Carolina. Every day I'm helping buyers navigate this process who it might be a little bit foreign to. People from out of state do not like due diligence in North Carolina, but it is part of the buying process here. So you need to get acclimated and get comfortable with it in order to have your offer accepted. But I've got a great track record of getting buyers under contract with good terms and making sure they have successful outcomes. So it may sound scary, but do know at the end of the day, people are buying homes in North Carolina and they are loving the homes that they're in. And just remember, the real big problem with the due diligence fee is if you walk away, as long as you move forward, it's not extra money. You have just made a prepayment on your down payment. So it gets credited towards your purchase price. So it's just money you're locking into the transaction earlier in the process, maybe earlier than you'd want, but it is locked into the transaction and it's not extra money. So as long as you move forward, you were gonna make that down payment anyways. You were going to apply that money towards the purchase price anyway. So it's not extra money, it's just money locked in earlier. So try not to overthink it, not to get in your own head and realize that, hey, I was gonna pay this money anyways. I just need to do some extra homework to make sure I'm really serious about buying this home. And my agent has done the homework and mitigated that risk for me in buying this home. Now remember, at the beginning of this video, I told you there was one big exception to this due diligence payment, kind of a big loophole. What's that secret? I'm gonna tell you it now. It is new construction. So everything I just told you about applies to a resale home purchase in North Carolina. A new construction home, the process is completely different. There is no due diligence fee. It is typically a builder deposit. Yes, that deposit is non-refundable, but it is a brand new construction home. You can still do inspections and there's a process to that, but most of the time builders are going to work with you and correct any issues that come up during an inspection. Again, not always, but most of the time there is no issue fixing what are typically smaller problems that could come up in a new build home inspection. So that's the big loophole, is a new construction home. So if you cannot get over this due diligence fee in North Carolina, perhaps a new construction home is right for you. And the good news is in the Raleigh-Durham area, we have tons of new construction options. I'm working with buyers all the time, building either from the ground up or move-in ready new construction homes. So that is your exemption and your way to get out of due diligence if you really just can't do it. If you are looking to make a move to Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, or any of our surrounding suburbs, I would love to help you out and help you navigate this due diligence fee so you have a successful outcome and you have just the right home that you want here in North Carolina. If you are looking to purchase anywhere Beaver in North Carolina, I've got a network of great agents who understand how this due diligence fee operates and how to put it into practice so you're being successful. So again, in the Raleigh-Durham market, I'm your guy. Make sure to reach out to me. But if you need an agent somewhere else in North Carolina, please reach out. I can help you find one too. So if you're planning to make the move, email me at info@keithorealty.com or check out the number on your screen. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss future content. And I'll see you next time.